Boy, that is nice and windy out there. All right, I see me. See if I can down just a bit to get more of me in. How that looks. Nope, too much. I'm adjusting.
I'm connected to the wrong. Probably gonna kick me out.
All right. Teresa says, "Hi, you are raring to go today." Yes, I am. Hi, Teresa. Trying to make sure that all my head shows up. Shay says, "Hello." Hi, Shay. I made it. We made it. We're all here. Yay.
Sort of made it.
How are we all doing today? It's windy here. I don't know how it is up in Portland, Shay, but here we got definitely quite the breeze going on. Carla says, "Hi, Siofra and Ian. How was your week? Will the aurora be in your path tonight?" Hi, everyone. Ian says, "Hi, everyone of you busy little bees." Teresa says, "I like your outfit." Thank you. I picked this whole outfit up at Goodwill for $5. I love that. I got it in the fall last year and had to wait till it got warm enough to be able to wear it. It's like, I like the colors and everything else about it. Jay says, "That Ian, LOL." Ian says, "Welcome to our chat. Please feel welcome to participate."
I was gonna put in to particulate, but then people might think I'm just don't know how to spell.
Well, some of them know you better than that, but yes.
I also could put in please feel free to precipitate.
Yes, I was going to say precipitation was not a bad idea. Tina says, "Hi, everyone." Hi, Tina. How you doing? We have a new camera coming, so it should be here Monday or Tuesday. I think Tuesday at this point. So by next week, we should have our new camera. This one has just completely died at this point, except for my onboard camera. So sorry about the. Shay says, "I like your invented words. They're lively."
Oh, thanks.
Of course, those are real words. Particulate and precipitate.
Yep.
They're just used in an unusual way.
Particulate down. Yep.
That's right, particulate down.
Yep.
All the particles are coming
Or
together.
precipitate down.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be rain, you know.
It could be other things. That's
down.
right.
Yep.
Could be
right.
dust particles or light particles or who knows. Anyway, we're here. Yay.
All right.
So yeah, we've had a pretty good week, I think. I had a dream about earthquake, so that was kind of intense. It was not here though, it was in a mountain area. It was like mountains across a lake. I was sitting on the other side of the lake and I was watching the mountains moving as the wave was going through, so it was kind of bizarre, but other dreams have been more normal. So that was the only one that was like, ooh, I hope not. But been sleeping pretty well most of the time, so that's been good too. Thank goodness. I like being into the phase where things are going the way they're supposed to. Yay.
Yep.
We're working on 2 different magical projects right now, so I'm taking pictures of them and getting ready to start the next phase of my version of the Hamsa. And however you say that. Teresa says, "Hot and windy here, smoke in the air from wildfires. My towels smell like smoke. I'll have to use the dryer till the fires calm down." Oh, yeah. I was wondering how close you were to them, because I know that you're in Manitoba. And I saw that they had evacuated like 17,000 people, I think north of Winnipeg, from what I read. So hopefully your air quality is not too damaged, but you got to be careful because smoke is definitely not healthy for human lungs. Al13 says hello. Hi, Al. I like your glasses. Smiley face with glasses on. There's so many different things. Violet says, "Hi guys, hi Violet."
And Violet.
Teresa says, "Many fires here and there. The worst are about an 8 to 10 hour drive north." Well, that's good. It's not too close. One hopes that it stays that far away. Don't need to have them on your front door. That's for sure. We had that one event we went to over around Ashland, Applegate area inland, and they were flying over our camp with helicopters with water buckets and dumping water buckets not far away. So we were somewhat anxious during that event, and I kept a lookout watching to see if the fire was getting closer and watching the smoke haze and stuff. And then we had that time, the last time we went up to the cabin, where the smoke got so bad from local wildfires that we had to leave because a day early because it was like we could hardly breathe and you couldn't see out the door. So it very impacted our stay in that case. So yeah, fires, the dangers of a heating up climate. And then, of course, the dangers of glaciers collapsing. I was looking at the pictures of that town in Switzerland that was basically taken out. At least they knew it was coming, and they evacuated pretty much the entire town, plus all the animals, the cattle and everything were evacuated out before it happened. And there's only one person they can't find, so it's possible that someone decided to stay behind, and it's like most of the town, 90% of the town is flattened, but there's more material to come off the mountain because the glacier melted and became unstable and slid down. So that was pretty impressive. Tina says, "I finally have a question. Siofra, how might one use a bird's nest magically?" Bird's nest magically.
Well, for something for the air element. I don't know.
Or
I
something
guess,
to cook.
I
I mean,
guess, well,
for birthing, a nest is like represents a home environment, protection maybe even. I've not used a bird nest myself, but I'm sure that there must be ways to use a bird's nest. Because eggs are in there and then they hatch. So something to do. So you might use a bird's nest for fertility ritual.
or bringing something to fruition.
Right.
Like
Manifesting.
giving birth to a project or
Right.
something, yeah.
Yeah, thinking it through from a symbolic point of view. Shay says new beginnings. Yep, that's not a bad idea. Ickle says, "Hi everyone, happy Sunday." Hi Ickle. Carla says, "I was wondering about a robin's egg. The baby's hatched and one of the eggs is in my yard." So that means the egg is dead? Teresa says, "Put symbols inside of it that you want to nurture." Yep, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to think of doing a magical operation with an item, you've got to think about what are the associations of the item that are known, and what are your personal associations
Yeah,
with that
remember this is
object.
all, this can all be,
Very symbolic.
yeah.
Blue Moonstone says, "Hello everyone." Hi Blue. Carla says, "No, I meant as a magical use." Yeah, I know that's what you meant, but that means that the egg is dead, right? I mean, I'm just checking if you found the egg. So I don't know. I mean, we know that chicken eggs are used for like dispelling things. You rub your body with them and crack them open
Well,
and
yeah, that's kind of a
absorb
different use,
thing.
yeah.
That's a different use of eggs. Tina says, "Oh, great ideas. I loved the discussion about the elementals last week. I'd love to learn more about how to use." He is working on that
Yeah.
video, he swears.
Yeah, I'm going to be coming up with that. Hopefully, I'll be working on that this week. I think it may take more than just one session to finish because it's going to require some thought on my part because I want to make it at least as good as I can, as good as my understanding is.
So maybe with Carla, with the robin's egg, think about the associations that the robin has. Like robin is the harbinger of spring. Again, new beginnings again.
Yeah, or anything, the creature springs forth from an egg, so anything you want to spring forth, or sort of the same way you can use a seed by like planting a seed to like this is plant is going to symbolize your new project you're going to do or whatever, and help it come to. Analogies. Analogies are what you want to use for a thing like that, and you can use elemental analogies and other analogies. If it has planetary properties, like if it's a lava rock, which might refer to Mars.
An
or,
egg could be a kaja because it's
well,
like
it could be, yeah.
that could represent like the potential for becoming.
Yes, and an egg is in fact symbolic of the Akaja, and that's one of the symbols. If you're looking at the tatwas, the symbol of Akaja is actually an egg, and sometimes it's black and sometimes it's white, depending on who you're looking at. Different cultures, basically, but same thing, yeah, because it contains everything. Especially for the Akaja, it contains everything that's not manifested yet, and of course the
Right.
manifestation would breaking of the egg to get the chicken would break it open.
Right.
So yep.
Carla says, "Oh yes, LLL." Tina says, "Air for weight loss
Well, it could
for a
be,
nest." I don't know.
yeah. No, air for weight loss is fine. Yeah.
Paper D says, "Hello, Siofra, everyone." Hi, Paper. Welcome. Jean says, "Hi, Siofra. I have a question. How do you stop a spiritual attack on yourself?" Well, I have a bunch of videos on psychic attacks and what you can do to defend yourself and protect yourself. There's a lot of different options, which is why I've got like 5 or 6 different videos on the subject. So, psychic self-defense. I have a class I just did on the subject of psychic self-defense. That's a Zoom class that you can purchase if you want. You can send me an email to Siofra's Magic Alcove at gmail.com, and you can buy the 2-hour class for like $25 and watch it and see if that generates any answers for what you're looking for, and watch the various videos I have on the subject. But knowing your natural authority is really one of the most important things. Knowing that you have the sovereignty of yourself and so forth, and that knowing that no one can attack you. I also did a video on the anatomy of a psychic attack so that you can understand some of the psychological mechanisms that are in play that we feed into in order to look at them in yourself and stop them and do the work to keep it from happening. And then any of the videos I have on boundaries, setting boundaries and so forth. And we just did a video on the meditation for creating your own psychic shield, energy shield and so forth. So that's one of the more recent ones that we've put up. And there's an explanation for the information or the symbolism and so forth about it that you can watch first. And then you can do that, creating your own shield like on a daily basis to help to protect yourself and sort of develop those boundaries, psychic boundaries and so forth, to keep things from getting in. And so you do it. It's your own work to do it, and then once you learn how, you can always defend yourself from that moment on. So it's a learning opportunity, annoying, but a learning opportunity. Teresa says, "Carla, keep it in a safe place. Start a collection of found objects." Tina says, "Looking forward to that, Ian, the video on the elements."
Yeah.
Carla says,
I'll try and do my best.
"Thank you. I'll clean it and add it to my altar." Zoe says, "Hello." Hi, Zoe. Teresa says, "I liked your video on thought forms." Yeah, that's another good one. It's all about self-defense and knowing and understanding them. Carla says, "Great idea, Teresa." Jean says, "Thank you so much." Yeah, and you can, write me and I can give you some ideas. Sometimes people send me emails, and I have one woman right now who's sending me emails and asking me a bunch of questions, and it's sort of interesting. Every time I answer a question, she sends me money, which is wonderful. Very appreciated that she apparently values my input. So that's kind of cool. But the videos are free, and then I told you about the class, so I'll post that up on the community posts on the channel. I've been thinking about doing that. I've been busy with other stuff this week. So, but yes, absolutely. So I give you what help I can. But my view to this is that it's not necessarily a good idea for you to be rescued by someone with more experience. It's better for you to get the skills and experience that you need to be able to defend yourself, because that you can take with you and no one can take it from you, and then you're not dependent on someone else to keep you safe.
Yep.
And I'm all about empowering individuals. And I was reading a meme about medicine women today, actually, which I thought was pretty accurate. It says, I will not heal you, you're not unwell. I will not save you, you don't need to be saved. It's like it's all about becoming you and in your power and knowing what you are and what you can do and having that kind of confidence and so forth, as well as the skill set. So unfortunately, it seems to be the way a lot of people learn magic is trying to protect themselves from psychic attack. It's very annoying that people do that. But yes. So Gabrielle says, hey everyone. Hi, Gabrielle. Violet says, I feel in need of a bind spell to make my neighbor look the other way or be gone during a viewing when selling the home. She is trying to hurt me purposefully out of mean and spite. We have this 3-year history. I went into a tailspin yesterday when I came home to her carport full of garbage. I thought sure she was going to leave it there for the next 6 months like last time. Then she magically took it all away today. I was very surprised, so I played into that mean, cruel joke, and I know she did it purposefully. Well, I'm sorry that that's happening, and trying to keep somebody away from you, especially when they live next door, it's a good question. I mean, my daughter had a lot of problems with a neighbor, and we did all kinds of things, and it finally worked, and the neighbor's gone. But it took a while. But in the meantime, trying to put up a magical wall between you and them, so would be one way. So he says, what helped you the most in strengthening your psychic abilities over time? Boundaries. And knowing I had ultimate authority over anything that was trying to influence me. Natural authority is definitely the biggest thing. And then learning how not to be afraid. Accepting things as they are instead of trying to interpret them and put them into some kind of a narrative, because that, generally speaking, our narratives we come up with are based on our personal experience and our assumptions about reality and our biases and everything else, which I think really interferes with our abilities.
I agree.
And so being able to accept the information and just let things happen, and then periodically practicing. I do a lot of practicing before going to bed. Is a good time for me, like looking at my aura, learning how to see my aura in colors and stuff like that, opening up my mind to input from the universe and having a dialogue with the universe, developing our language, our symbolic language together, that kind of thing. Experience definitely is a big thing, because the more you have actual results that you can see, the more confident you become in your own abilities. But try never to lose the sight of the fact that the ego is sometimes pretty tricky, and making the mistake of thinking that you're all powerful and all knowing. I make mistakes and I know it. So Violet says, can you help me with an idea? And thank you. I do have a fiery wall oil I can use. All right.
Yeah, I think what they used over there was salt and pepper.
Yeah, I used a combination of salt, pepper, and was there something else with it? And cayenne. I used black pepper, salt, and then cayenne too added to it,
Of
I
course,
think.
black salt would be good to
Right.
use if you had black salt made.
Well, that would be yeah,
Yeah.
you can do that. But you can make black salt just using black pepper and salt and mixing it together. One of the ways of doing it. And adding cayenne to it to give it a little bit of a kick. And then sprinkling it between you and the neighbor. And visualizing a wall when you do that. An impenetrable wall, that they won't cross and they won't notice you and that kind of thing. Carla says, hey, Angel Girl. Teresa says, this is why sometimes the lives turn into cooking shows. Yeah, we are talking ingredients.
Yep.
Condiments and spices and whatnot. Magical application of common kitchen items. There's plenty of them. Throw some rosemary in there too, Violet. It's like you can,
Yeah.
and some sage maybe, ground it up and add it to what you're doing as good protection. Rosemary plants are really good for that. I like using rosemary for a lot of things. Paula says, yeah, I'm starting to get hungry. Pepper. So he says, do you think everyone has psychic abilities or do you have to be born with them? I think some people are naturally more gifted when they come in for whatever reason, maybe because they've practiced it a lot in other lifetimes.
Let's say
But
anybody can get psychic abilities. There are techniques and things.
right, yeah, and even if you're not born with it naturally, then you can certainly evolve and develop them. And so I don't think it's a requirement that you have to be born with them. I think there just are some people who are. There's just some people that are more gifted in any area, regardless of what it is. Like some people would make a great, you know, pianist for a concert pianist, and other people are good for, like, playing the piano for their friends, but they're not in the same level. And sometimes it seems to be a gift that they're born with, and then they practice and make more of it. So certainly, experience and practice makes a huge difference. And I think a lot of times when it comes to psychic abilities, people are getting intuitions all the time, but aren't necessarily um, savvy to exactly how to tune into those and to recognize them as abilities like intuition and learning to listen to yourself, being inspired by things that you see around you. Psychic abilities are broad and subtle at the same time. And not all of them are like, I got hit in the head and I fell off a ladder and now I can see ghosts. So Gabrielle says, my sister got me a harp for my birthday. The fairies are loving it too. I'm happy as a clam. Oh, yeah, I bet. Harps are wonderful. My mom plays the harp. She's a Celtic harpist. Carla says, black salt seems to be quite potent. I made some and used for a troublesome neighbor. The apartment stayed empty for 5 months. I made some pink peace salt to lift it a bit. Well, good for you. Gabrielle says, I'm a Gemini and am an air sign, so the harp is right up my alley. The sound is so nice. Yeah, my mom actually played a traditional Celtic wedding song for our hand fasting when we got married. Oki says, have you ever worked with dragons? Thanks for going live. You're welcome. And I've had encounters with dragons. I haven't worked specifically with them for a specific purpose. So I'm not like educated on the specific dragon magic that people talk about. But I've certainly encountered a number of them over the years. I've encountered some river dragons and some air dragons and the two-headed dragon thing in the woods that was so intense. Yeah, so I've certainly encountered them. And I flew on one to the moon during one guided meditation. That was fun. He was a green dragon. I liked him. He was small enough for me to climb onto. Some of the other ones are too big for that. But a lot of people are getting into dragons, and whether their information is accurate or not, I don't know, since I'm not privy to all of that. But it seems like a pretty fun thing. April says, hello, everyone. Hi, April. Hello, everything, excuse me. Gabrielle says, that's awesome. Yeah, once I learn, I'd love to play at weddings, too. Yeah, my mom had an interesting problem with the harp. She's a Christian, and she believes that it was a gift from God, and was taught that if you charge money for a gift, then God takes it away from you. And she was in my office one day for a visit and was talking about it because she was having trouble charging to do weddings. So I like positioned it in a different way, and I said, you're not actually charging for the gift, you're charging for the time you're taking away from your day where you could be doing other things. And for them, for you to just not go shopping, not watch TV, not do the dishes, whatever it was you wanted to do, and to be there for them. So the money is for your time, not for your gift. And that helped. Sometimes working around your brain is tricky. April says, I meant everyone, sorry. No, that's okay. Everyone, everything, we're good. April says, I heard dragons are primarily on the mental plane. Well, they're certainly not on the physical plane. And Zoe said, what daily practices do you recommend for someone wanting to become a clearer channel? Okay, so different meditations. There's a lot of different meditations that you can do to help with that. Doing the shadow work is important, clearing your own psychological trauma and stuff out and dealing with that. Looking at your own assumptions about reality and how it works. To be a clear channel means to not impose your ideas on the information that you're getting, and it definitely, the thoughts that you have and the biases that you have definitely affect any form of channeling. It's impossible not to have a certain level of effect, no matter how clear you are, but the clearer you are, the better the message that comes through. So boundaries, so that you're in charge of what's going on, the understanding of your autonomy. Yeah. So pretty much everything that you do to help yourself will help with the channeling. Apparently I didn't bring a lozenge in with me today.
Oh, there's a bag there. I don't know if there's any in it. It looks like it's flat.
It's probably empty.
Nope.
There's one in there? Wow.
Maybe even two.
Yeah. Gabrielle says, "Oh, I'd absolutely charge if I was a professional. I'm glad you talked to her. Thank you.
You shall receive.
It really helped her a lot." So Oki says, "Any tips for increasing your wealth through magic and mindset? I'm currently overcoming procrastination." Well, overcoming procrastination would be a good step, because without doing things, you can't get anything. And I wish I knew, because I think imagining what it is you want, and then looking for it, but letting go of what you think is the ultimate goal. Because like if we visualize things too well, we sort of put them in a box and limit the universe's ability.
Right. Yeah, you generally want to give the idea, like I'd like wealth or whatever, but don't get too specific. I mean, unless you know there's a specific way that wealth can come to you and you just want to trigger that. Otherwise, you could be limiting it to your ideas of where it might come from. You leave it more open-ended, that's better sometimes, unless you have a clear arrow you're shooting at, a target you're shooting at and trying to accomplish that. But don't get too stuck on that. Keep yourself flexible.
Teresa says, "Have you tried massaging your throat when you feel the urge to cough?" Not under these circumstances. Curious if that could help. This is a dryness. I don't think massaging would actually help. It's just dry in here today. We must not have much humidity. Gabrielle says, "Yeah, I try not to attach my narratives to what I'm experiencing spiritually. So much less stress that way." Yeah, that's true. If you're always trying to comprehend and understand the true significance of what you're experiencing, it really...
Yeah, the important thing is to experience it and do that, with consciousness, but don't attach your mental narratives to it. Yeah, I guess you said it about the best way.
Okay, says, "I always aim for infinite finances." You might want to be a little more specific than that. Like, are you looking for a job, for example? Have you applied for any jobs that are out there? Have you looked around to see what's available?
I would add one little thing to that. I like the idea of infinite finances in general, but there's two problems with that. One of them is the more specific you can make it in two respects, the better it'll tend to manifest. One is you need to give it a time frame to manifest in. So, which could be as long as while I'm alive or before I die or something like that. If you can fix the limit to have it by this time, and of course, don't get ridiculously short. I want to be infinitely wealthy in a week, you know. But fixing the time limits can help, and also fixing a specific thing, leaving it too open ended, because really, nobody actually has infinite wealth. You know, that's not practically possible. So, you know, I would, if it were me and I was really trying to manifest something, I would pick some amount. You know, like maybe I want to get my first $1 million or something. Even, you know, I mean, it can be a large amount, but still to make it have a better chance of manifesting, I definitely start with a specific amount, and for me, I'd probably start with a smaller specific amount. But that having been said, we've been trying to manifest a couple of better cars down and haven't succeeded in getting the money yet. I've done a lot of talismans and things uh, for money, and basically, I haven't come up with any that have worked for me yet in the past, or at least not enough so that I'd notice. I suspect they all helped out a little bit. But yeah.
And Gabrielle says, yes, exactly, Ian. Oki says, Fisherman's Friends lozenges are my favorite, highly recommended. Not mine, too strong for me. Just a Girl says, hi, I hope you're having a good day. My question today is about health. Do you think a connection with fairies magic can help us? If so, I have a chronic disease. Okay, so I think yes. Um, Connecting with spirit in any form whatsoever and magic can definitely help us with our health. It at least will help us with our stress level when it comes with figuring out how to deal with our health, but it also can help us to find the right people who are out there who may have the information that we need to be able to answer the questions about what we can do for our health. The healing chant and the sacred tree meditation I find are really super good for that. And that's something you can do on a daily basis to help with your body and your mindset and so forth. And the way we think about what's going on in our bodies, it's, yeah. So I do believe it can. Fairies try to help. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not as helpful. It just seems to depend on whatever it is that's going on and whether they can actually help or not. So Teresa says, imagine counting your infinite wealth. That would take forever. Carla says, complete and total financial freedom.
Actually, Carla, I think that's a pretty good one, and that's generally what I use when I'm trying to do that because, yeah, that's what I want, financial freedom. I think that's the perfect description, and that's what I use myself.
Zoe says, how do you discern between true messages and the mind's noise? Knowing yourself. The more
Yeah.
you know yourself, the thing is that without doing the work, the shadow work, the self-awareness work, the meditations and so forth, it's harder to determine what your own voice is, your own mind, your concerns, your anxieties, your fears, your desires, your wishes, and so forth from the external voice. So knowing yourself is key to any of those things, whether it's psychic abilities or channeling or anything like that. Is knowing yourself. The better you know yourself, the more likely you will be able to tell the difference between that external voice that you might hear from the inside, that's the true message, and your own internal dialogue. Most people have an internal dialogue going. Not everyone does, but most people do. And so, yeah.
Eckhart Tolle says to be the observer, you realize that you're not the mind, and simply to observe and watch the mind is a good way to do that. And that would probably be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's one kind of meditation that I like a lot. An observer can help you in a crisis situation too. If you get the observer idea down, when you're in the middle of a crisis, you can, at least I can, separate that observer out and sort of get a better picture of what's happening and figure out a path through it that will maybe save your life, who knows. So it's good. April says, I have a hard time understanding the books I read. I only understand half of the books. I would like to comprehend an entire book one day. I get bored with some of the chapters when I'm reading. Well, maybe they're the wrong books. I don't know. Oki says, that's great advice. Thank you both. Highly appreciated. You're welcome. Teresa says, visualize and feel what you want to manifest, not the money. It's just an abstraction. Carla says, is anyone doing any aurora magic with the current storm, G4 magnitude and intensifying? I'm hoping to get outside if it's clear enough. I mean, it's clear right now, but who knows? The fog might roll in and we won't be able to see it. But I certainly had all kinds of fun stuff when I was living up north where the aurora was more common. It's pretty interesting. Gabrielle says, there's a fairy dancing in my room in the corner. Well, I'm glad the fairy's happy. Carla says, same here, Ian. Teresa says, financial freedom is not anchored into anything. I doubt that would manifest, just my opinion.
Well, it kind of depends on the perspective of the observer, whether it's anchored to anything. My reason for financial freedom includes several things, like the fact that I'm want to become enlightened, and I do not want to buy in being hindered by money, because that's one of the big problems with getting money is all the hindrance that it causes. Like, we've heard lots of horror stories about around here about people who have won the lottery, and even about local people here who have won the lottery and have had real horror stories with people harassing them and never-ending crap. So, financial freedom is part of my picture, and it's anchored into something. If depends on how you look at it.
How you define it.
Yeah, I'll let it drop at that. But financial freedom for me is being able to do what I want to on this earth without the lack of money getting in my way. And what I want to do is not extreme. I'm not looking to build $1 million business. I don't want to buy a yacht. No, I don't want to buy an airplane. I just want to live my life happily in a normal, in a normal way. I don't want to be rich and famous. I just want to be not hindered in doing the things I want to do by not having money, and the things I want to do are not expensive. So for me, that's what most people would not consider much money, but I just want to be happy enough with what we've got to live happily, not be pressed by bills and stuff all the time. And so, for me, that's financial freedom. So if you have a clear picture of it, then it is pretty well anchored in something. It depends on what your picture is.
Right. So, Paul says, Just a Girl says, cute, say hi from me to your fairy. And Gabrielle says, yeah, I like the observer aspect. Paul says, or Polly says, greetings, what kind of rituals do you suggest on a new moon? Beginning a new project. You can let go of anything old and start something new, and kind of like use it as a shifting point. It depends on what your needs are when it comes to that.
But yeah, generally things that are starting things, new beginnings, types of things. It's
clearing out
something
the
you want
old and getting ready to
something you
start
want
the
to
new.
grow and manifest to full. You could also use that for a project or something you're doing, and you want it to manifest to full by the full moon or something like that.
So Tina says, what jewelry pieces are you wearing today? Okay, so I found another amethyst necklace that I didn't remember I had in my jewelry box, so I started wearing that because it's nice and short. And this is my amethyst phoenix, and I just like it, so I put it on. This is my fairy star, and I thought today would be a good day to wear it, so I don't get to wear it all the time. And this is another amethyst necklace that's been charging up on the amethyst crystal web for a long time, and it sort of doesn't cover all the other ones up, so that's what I'm wearing today. As well, of course, is my amethyst ring, which I wear pretty much all the time. Me and amethysts, what can I say? So Oki says, thank you, chat, as well. Great recommendations. Also, was May as intense for you as it was for me? Well, I don't know how intense it was for you, but May was pretty intense for me. I had some pretty intense dreams and things, so yeah, it was something else. I had good dreams, though. I mean, dreams about the amethyst crystal web and the amazing women and all the people in gold and white robes and the map that they made and everything else, which was just a wonderful gift. So I appreciated that. Just a Girl says, yes, it was. Al says, reread those books, April. When you pick the book back up to read again, go back to a page or two and start reading from there. Well, sometimes you're just not ready to absorb whatever the information is. And sometimes we've had books we haven't liked, and then later on it makes sense, and then we like them. So it can vary quite a bit. Gabrielle says, yeah, having enough money to be comfortable but not being harassed is good. So he says, how do you approach shadow work in your practice? Do you have any techniques or guidance that have helped you in the past? Combination of things. Definitely interpersonal work with a therapist is a good idea if you have like the trauma kind of stuff that I had when I was a child. I was raised in an intense abusive environment where I was tortured and abused and all of that. So learning how to deal with that stuff and get rid of the stuff is not my responsibility. Giving it back to those who deserve it has helped quite a bit. And then just the looking in yourself and understanding why you react certain ways to certain situations and unpacking it and looking at it to sort of determine. One of the things they talked about in therapy was your assumptions about how reality works, and figuring out what my assumptions were was really useful. And there were a number of them. And when I realized that I thought that was how reality worked, because when I was a child, that was what happened to me. And when you're a kid, you think everything is about you anyway. Being able to challenge those assumptions about reality to see if they're actually still true or not was huge. And then discovering that most of them weren't true. In fact, I don't think any of them were actually true anymore. I thought I was evil. There was something seriously wrong with me because the universe hated me so much that all these terrible things happened to me. I thought everything bad in the world was my fault. I thought if the world came to an end, it was my fault. I was responsible somehow. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And figuring out what those things are and then getting the tools to let them go and not be responsible for the things that you have nothing to do with, and then taking personal responsibility for your own actions. Your own words and actions are your responsibility. And no matter how terrible the experiences that we have had, and some of us have had some pretty bad ones, may have been, it's not a reason to be bad to others. So yeah, it's a process for sure, and it requires support from other people. It can help anyway to have other people to be there and be supportive while you're learning stuff. I realized I had evolved and developed as a spiritual person and as an intellectual person, but not as a emotional person. I was still like reacting about a 6-year-old level.
Well, I think that's pretty common for people with PTSD, especially.
Yeah.
Part of them get stuck in that place where they were,
Exactly.
until you can get past that.
It was stymied,
Yeah.
just bam, just like that.
I mean, I'm no expert or anything, but just from observation of being around people who had certain amounts of PTSD from stuff like that, including myself.
Carla says it's clearing up and looking clear for our part of Pennsylvania. I hope they're popping. Just a Girl says it was too much sometimes and almost numb other times. Well, you got to give yourself a break and be kind to yourself, because you don't want to become another abuser of yourself. Then you're just beating yourself up constantly and for failing at becoming better, which just makes no sense. It's a slow progression. And yeah. And we used to do things like appreciation circles, which was interesting experience because a lot of people have never really been appreciated by someone else and they're very nervous about it. So if you have people you can trust that will actually tell you how much they appreciate you and what they value about you as a human being. That can be very helpful. It's very uncomfortable for a lot of people, but we have to learn. And then I had a lot of people where I would give them a compliment and then, or they would give me a compliment and I would go on to explain why it wasn't really anything I did or it wasn't worthy of a compliment or whatever. And finally people started saying the appropriate response when someone gives you a compliment is to say thank you. And that's it. I'm like, thank you. Yeah, so we learn. We learn by doing and by experimenting and trying and giving yourself a break. It's fine. Absolutely. Carla says, yep, that's how I picture it too, Ian. April says, thank you et al. Carla says, we don't need a lot, just enough. Tina says, nice, thank you. I thought they were black stones. I must have missed something. Black stones? I thought so too. Gabriel says, I have hang-ups with money because of how my mom was bad with money. How do I heal my root chakra or will Kundalini fix this? I don't know. I mean, my father always made us ask for money. So I had a long time, I had trouble asking for money, like even when I was doing my job as a massage therapist. Yeah, practice. And Kundalini might fix it for you, but Jean says, I'm so sorry. Well, thank you, Jean. It wasn't fun, but I survived, and my last 33 years married to Ian have been a blessing for sure. So at least I had something to look forward to.
Oh, thank you.
Teresa says, I need to be in an appreciation circle. A hug might be nice too. Yeah. Carla says, your amethyst necklace. Oh, thought it was a black stone. Okay. Thank you, Carla. I didn't realize that people thought it was black. That's because, color doesn't always translate. I didn't miss anything. Carla knew what she was talking about. Carla's laughing. You know me, I'm very literal. it's like, yeah, you're welcome, Carla says. That's our Garuda, huh? Your Garuda.
That was my Garuda. Yeah, I rescued him so I can take him in the house.
Oh, he's so cute. Can we show him?
Sure.
I found this Garuda for Ian. He's one of our personal protectors. He's kind of heavy to wear, though.
Yeah, he's better for hanging on a wall.
Yeah, look at that guy.
He's solid metal, so
yeah, he is heavy. There's no doubt about it. He wanted to have one he could wear, so I got this. And I was like, yeah, he's pretty cute.
That's okay, though. He can stay on the wall.
He can stay on the wall.
He'll protect me anyway.
Yeah, I have a statue of him. We have another statue of him. We discovered we had him on a bell that we bought. There's a Garuda on the bell. We didn't even know was there. Yep.
So we seem to kind of have a connection with him.
We didn't know was there all along. So Gabriel says, that's a pretty necklace. Thank you. Gaga says, I bought another book by Manly P. Hall, The Secret Destiny of America. Congratulations.
Oh, that one I haven't read.
Okay. Carla says, still laughing. And Carla says, I love him. Teresa says, one of my childhood traumas was whatever I asked for, the answer was no. It didn't matter what I asked for, even the most basic, no, my whole life. That took special healing work. I say yes to myself now as well as I can. Awesome. Shay says, handsome Garuda. Yeah. Just a Girl says, thank you so much for your words. Your input is so beautiful. I'm really grateful for today. Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that we're helpful. Carla says, can I see him real quick again? Let's see. Make sure I have him in the right place since I can't see it until a minute after I put it
I
up.
don't know the way you were showing a minute.
See, that way. Probably a little bit better. Get him a little bit closer.
There we go.
Try that.
Yeah, you might hold it by the top so you can show his feet because he's got a serpent down there, I think, on this one. Does he have a serpent down there in his feet?
I can't tell
I'm
because
sorry,
I'm holding him.
yeah, I'm still getting the other video yet.
Takes a minute.
It
Nope.
takes a moment to go through.
Yep, there he is.
Okay, yeah, he doesn't have anything down there though, just his tail feathers.
Isn't he cute? I love him too.
He's holding the serpent in his hands.
Right, he's got it.
Yeah.
His serpent is across here,
And biting on it with his beak.
and he's biting on it. Yep. Because he's a killer of snakes. The Garuda shows up in a lot of cultures, in a lot of nations' flags and things, both in the
Yeah,
East and Mexico
surprisingly.
has one. There's actually quite a few. So, Gaga says, I haven't heard about it, so I bought it. Teresa says, I like the belly. Carla says, I love him. Teresa says, his chest and belly look like an owl. Well, he is a bird of prey, so not really an owl, more like an eagle.
Yes, he is supposed to be an eagle. He's a mount for Vishnu.
Yes.
But he is supposed. It's an eagle.
He is an eagle. Mostly
yeah.
eagles are the ones that represent the Garuda. Carla says, he's awesome. Oh my God. Jay says, Teresa, that sounds so rough. I'm glad you're saying yes now. Gabrielle says, reminds me of a flying squirrel. Teresa says, thanks, Shay. It was a big hurt. Tina says, oh, that's awesome. I don't know if I ever heard of a Garuda. Well, I didn't know about him either until we were under psychic attack from a group. And
he's another Indian god that I seem to have a lot of natural connections to them somehow.
Yeah, me
even
too.
Though I've never been there in this lifetime.
Yeah, he's one of the Hindu deities, and he actually sent me a statue to the Salvation Army. I've got this really tall statue of him with
Really
Vishnu
fancy.
on his back.
Really elaborate carved.
And there's
version.
like the horned turtle and the snakes under his feet that he's attacking and everything. And he is like, yeah.
Yeah, he's beautiful.
Yep, he's like 1.5 feet tall, I think. Is about the height of that statue. It's significant. And it was like $20. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I have to have this. Pretty clear he sent it to me. And Violet says, oh my gosh, so funny, flying squirrel, crack up. So he says, do you have any ideas for birthday rituals? Mine is coming up and I want to do something special. Okay, so 1 year for my birthday, I planned my own birthday. And I did the birthday I wanted, and everybody came. It was sort of a ritual. So everyone's birthday is going to be different. In mine, I wanted to go through some of my childhood stuff and where I came from, and then where I was, and reaffirm myself and so forth. I wrote a big poem, letter kind of thing, and read it, which I'm sure was not much fun for the people who were there having to listen to it, but picked my own presents, and found them, and then everyone put money down and bought them for me. Yeah, it was the only time I ever did that particular type of birthday. But renewing yourself, affirming yourself, being joyful, finding a way to celebrate the fact that you're in a body, in a life, having this experience, and how far you've come from where you started, and why you're here if you want to. I don't know, it's just whatever feels good. When I met Ian, he had never had a birthday party his entire life.
Oh,
and so
true.
One of the first things I did when we moved over here was on his birthday, and I went to the store and I bought a happy birthday thing to hang on the wall, and got some balloons and whatnot, and got a cake and some cards and everything. And so he came home to this birthday celebration, and that was quite meaningful to him, because I heard that he'd never had a birthday, and it was, it's never too late in a way to have a happy childhood. So I gave him one. So yeah, people that you care about around, and arranging it so you don't have to feel like you're on display or you're required to do anything you don't want to, like weird social awkward stuff or whatever. I don't know. So April says awesomeness. Erin says hello. Sorry for being late. Hi, Erin. Carla says say yes to everything positive. Teresa, you tell that no, yes. Carla. Teresa says Carla love, and Carla says Teresa love, and Teresa says birthday hugs, and Max says, do you believe in the jinn? I think that they are a spirit being, and I don't know that they are like the stories around them, that you find them in a lamp and rub the lamp and get 3 wishes. I
No.
think they're a fire spirit, basically.
My understanding is that that's basically the Arabian term for fire spirits, and that they're basically fire spirits. And I believe that's what.
The fire
Yeah,
element,
that's
the head of the element, Lord
right.
Jin, is what we
Right.
call the fire elemental head. So, he says, that's so sweet, thanks. You're welcome. Carla says, whose birthday? What did I miss? Happy birthday. Yaga says, how accurate is Franz Barden's information on the Kabbalah?
Franz Barden's information on the Kabbalah is 100% accurate. Absolutely, but it's different from the Western Kabbalah in a sense, only in the sense of what they focus on. Barden focuses on the practical use of the Kabbalah, so he specifies how to use the letters. You know, the idea of the Kabbalah is that you speak a word and it happens because it's the original force of creation. So that's what Barden's Kabbalah is, the idea of speaking the words, magical words, and learning the Kabbalah. And you have to learn it one letter at a time according to the letters of the alphabet, since he published that in whatever version of German he spoke. They're in Czechoslovakia, so it's translated. But yes, it's 100%, but he, since there's so much information available on numerology and that, he goes through the first 10 numbers, but then he says, for all that information, just go to all the written sources, of which there are plenty. So his stuff in the Kabbalah is different, and it explicitly trains you to use the words in a magical fashion. So basically the idea is by the time you finish that, you can say a word and make things happen, and some of them are pretty spectacular. There have been several cases of Barden's students paralyzing people with a word, for example, and one of them was imprisoned with Barden, and when he spoke the word, his last name was Quencher. When he spoke the word and paralyzed one of the guards torturing him, or somebody else in the Nazi prison, the others, they shot him for revenge and out of fear, I suppose. So as an example, that's one of the things. You speak a word and paralyze, and that doesn't work just for people. That particular one, Barden states, will also paralyze spirit beings, any being basically. So that's how his Kabbalah differs. He teaches you how to do actual things with the words, and not things that you might or might not get results or you have to wait for, but things that will 100% give you results, provided you finish the course and do the practices he said. And it takes lots and lots of repetition, just the same way mantras take lots of repetitions to make them actually functional, especially if you're going to get it functional onto a physical plane. So, but his information is absolutely 100%. I trust it over anything else I've ever read anywhere, period.
So Ambrosia says, sounds good, lovely to be here. It's been a while. Hi, Ambrosia. Gabrielle says, I didn't celebrate my birthday. It was May 28th. I just felt very sad. But my sister sent me a heart, so I appreciate that. Ambrosia says, random question, thoughts on the Fae? I have lots of thoughts on the Fae. It's not a very random question because I get asked that a lot. They're here. They have a job to do. They've been around longer than humans. They're sort of disappointed in a lot of the rhetoric that's being promoted about them, and lies about who they are and what they are and how they act and so forth. So they're somewhat annoyed with a lot of humans. There's a lot of misinformation about them, and without them, we probably wouldn't have as wonderful life that we have on the planet as it is. So they're sort of part of the spiritual existence of all things that exist. I don't know what else to say randomly. Carla says, then it's a musical celebration, Angel Girl. Happy belated. I wholeheartedly believe that music will heal all.
And for what it's worth, I don't listen to it for healing in particular, but I listen to a lot of music, usually an hour and a half a day.
And harps are
more.
wonderful.
Yeah.
It was funny, the harp was outlawed in Ireland because they discovered that they were using different rhythms and and so forth to pass information along from castle to castle about the British and what they were doing and where they were, the invaders and so forth.
Yeah.
And they figured it out, so they outlawed the
Yeah.
harp. Yet, for some reason, they didn't outlaw the drum. So,
Well, drums, yeah, same way. It's
and
like,
they were used the
It-
same way.
any instrument can be used that way if they figure out a
Right.
good, yeah.
So that was pretty funny. But for a long time, it was actually against the law to own a harp in Ireland and to play one.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I'm glad the harp is back. And Gabrielle says, most of my friends dumped me after I left Christianity a few years ago, then more in 2023 because I didn't convert. So I haven't had a friend group since, and the friends I do have moved away. So having a birthday and no one nearby to celebrate with felt like a punishment. Sometimes I feel like the universe wants me abandoned. It's tough to shake. Yeah, I'm sorry, dear. I don't think the universe wants that at all. That's just stupid people and their ideas about who people are supposed to be. So hopefully you'll be making new friends that are actually real friends and not fair weather friends that are only there because you're suiting their particular purpose and how they think you should be instead of being yourself. So I'm sorry. It's better to have only one real friend in the world than it is to have 100 fake ones, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes, but it's true. So he says,
And, you know,
Ian,
if you have to be a Christian to stay friends with your other that were your friends,
They're not
really
friends.
friends. You know, friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So he says, Ian, are you familiar with Michael W. Ford's work? If so, do you have any opinions about his books?
No, I just looked him up real quick, and I don't have any opinions about it. I'm not particular drawn to any of the Luciferian stuff. Understand the deal about the Lightbringer and that, but that's definitely not what I'm into. So, no, I know that they've. I don't know about the Luciferians in particular. I know that the Satanists have done actually a lot of good for magic and the occult in general through
Proactive, progressive,
proactive
radical
stuff, yes.
acts.
Even though I don't care for their philosophies, I have to say they've done a lot of good for magic and the occult. So, no, it's not something I plan on delving into at all.
April says, wow. Gabrielle says, yeah, I love my harp, Carla. Carla says, I'm sorry they use it to divide. They're losing their grip. Stay strong. And that's the universe's protection, Gabrielle. April says, Sarah Bala harp music is soothing and calms me. Yes, harp music is just wonderful. Gabrielle says, exactly. I'm glad the friends I have allow me to be myself and they are on the same page spiritually. Tina says, well said, Siofra. We care about you here, Gabrielle. I hope you will make some local friends too. And Zoe says, okay, thanks for answering, Ian.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's so many different potential paths out there, and people's definitions of things are one of the things that, decide how it interacts with them or not. And, there's like lots of stuff. Gabrielle says, thanks, yeah, I shouldn't think it means anything bad about me because I'm alone. Really, the loss of friends is because I woke up and developed boundaries. Yeah, seriously. And that's a good thing. It just sort of feels lonely in the beginning. But you've got fairies dancing in your corner, so you're not actually alone. In fact, you would probably wish you would be more alone than you are because sometimes there's too many of them. So, yeah. Careful. But yes, boundaries are definitely important. Yep. Gabrielle says, and they are not good friends if they threw away a decade-long friendship because they wouldn't believe in their stupid God. Well, the problem is that the people that are so committed to that don't understand that there are different ways of belief and can't accept it. If they could accept the fact that people believe differently, then it wouldn't matter. But for a lot of them, it seems if you don't believe what they believe, then you are a danger. It's one side or the other. And you're either with them or against them. And you weren't with them, therefore you're against them. So then you're on the outs.
It's unfortunate because, it's like that's more promulgated by the actual Christians than it is by the religion or the Bible itself. unfortunately.
So Gabriela says, laugh out loud, yeah, there's so many fairies. Teresa says, what is behind the first of the month, rabbit, rabbit? I don't know. It's just the first of the month is Rabbit, Rabbit Day. Not sure exactly who started it. The first time I heard of it, I lived at the Blue Zoo down in Santa Cruz, and it was someone from Humboldt County, and she said that they made it up, but I don't know if that's true. And basically, Rabbit Rabbit Day is first person to wake up in the morning and run around their bed and yell Rabbit Rabbit wins. You don't win anything in particular. It's just a fun day to have, and it's like rabbit rabbits. And, it's like, I think I looked up once, but I don't remember.
You should have an actual rabbit.
We do have an actual rabbit.
Every
Gabrielle
day is
says,
rabbit day.
I'm like, y'all need to rotate or something. There are too many fairies. Carla says, are you guys familiar with, I think, Buckland? I saw a complete collection for cheap and was wondering if he's worth looking at.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's worth looking
Buckland, as far as, he's strictly witchcraft based mostly, but he's very authentic.
Saxon witchcraft, I think.
He's very authentic on the subject. So, yes, highly recommended in general.
April says, I used to wonder that also, Teresa. Gabrielle says, Rabbit Rabbit Day? What's that? It's the first of every month. Teresa says, do you run around your bed? I can't. It's against the wall. And I would never make it. I just yell Rabbit Rabbit when I get up. And since, no one else can run around their bed, I always win. I assume I won.
We get a rabbit running around our feet. That's good enough for us.
And our rabbit goes, whoo! And this morning was so funny because Ian came into the living room and he's looking for the bunny, and the bunny is running around his feet. And he keeps looking in the wrong direction, and the bunny has moved to a new spot, and he's just bouncing around his feet. It was hysterical. Yeah, and I'm watching it. Gabrielle says that's cute. But I don't know, maybe it has to do with fertility, because rabbits are definitely a fertility symbol. It's the first of the month. Of course, months are artificial, so, who knows. I mean, time is artificial too, right? Calendars, all that stuff. Everything. We created that.
Yep.
Not necessarily like truth, as it were. But Shay says, if it's the first thing you say on the first of the month, it's good luck. Yes, absolutely, Shay. I think it's always good luck to have a rabbit around. So he says, I have very supportive friends, but I have a hard time with my family. They're very religious, and unfortunately, I had to make a choice between staying close to them or being true to who I am. I'm sorry, that's an unfortunate choice to have to make.
I know it. I know it's the way it is.
Sometimes it is.
It's really kind of an unfair choice. Yeah.
Yeah. My sister and my mother are both Christian, but I don't seem to have a problem with my sister and my mother. So, yeah. My mother went to the Universalist church, and somehow she got the idea that I was a, Dianic witch.
Right.
She took a class on witchcraft to understand me better, which was very nice of her to do and an attempt to try, but she took a Dianic class and she was very confused when it was over. And she kept buying me all these like female oriented Dianic witch books and sending them to me every year for a while. I'm like, it took me a while to put that two together. It was hysterical. But Shay says, always. Gabrielle says, language is artificial too. Yes, it is. April says, same with me, Zoe. Shay says, good luck to have a rabbit around. And Carla says, thank you guys, I'll grab it. April says, laugh out loud. Gabrielle says, yeah, Zoe, that stinks. Religion is so divisive. And Shay says, that's so funny about your mom taking the Dianic class. Yes, it was hysterical. And I said, it might have been a good idea for you to ask me first before you signed up for the class.
If any of you out there don't know, Dianic is generally female-oriented, and they're kind of largely, the ones I've run into have largely been against males, except then I knew one who then married a guy. So, I don't know,
There's actually two types of Dianic witches, and one is male and female, and the other is all female, which was a surprise when I was doing some research that I found out. Because mostly I'd only met the all-women type. And Teresa says, bunny around the feet reminds me of teddy bear. He sticks to me like Velcro. And sometimes I don't see him because he's right behind me, and I can't see him because when I move, he copies and is always
Yeah,
behind me.
and we have to be really careful because bunnies don't make any sound, so they're just silent. They're silent and fast, and so they're there instantly.
Yep. And fragile. We don't want to hurt them. Oh my, that would be terrible. Don't want to step on a bunny. So yeah. Having animals around though is good for people.
I think so.
Teresa says bunny rage. Carla says, ah, Siofra, love. Gabriel says, are the Dianic witches like nuns? Do they swear off men? Well,
Some of them
the
individually, kind of.
a lot of the times they're lesbians,
A lot of times they've been abused by men as part of it.
and that too. But they also reject the God, and they feel they don't need to have the God or the polarity or whatever in there. We actually had two women come who were a couple came to one of our Beltane celebrations, and they wanted to participate, which I don't have a problem with, but the May Day celebrations I do are definitely a polarity kind of thing. So I said, well, yeah, but you can't do both. You can't try to become the king and the queen. You can choose one or the other. So one of them picked trying to become the king, and the other tried to pick becoming the queen. Neither one of them made it that year, but we tried to be as inclusive as we could. But it was an already planned ritual event, so didn't have much flexibility in there. Alice says, I put a bell on Bunny's collar for that reason. Never thought about that. Gabrielle says, now I'm thinking of the Monty Python bunny. Is he white? He's part white.
Yep.
He's mostly white with some black and some brown.
But it is kind of amazing, and it makes you think of that because all of a sudden there'll be nothing there. Then the bunny will suddenly appear, and he's so silent, and he can like jump. He just flies through the air, and he has his feet up and everything. He's like just comes flying through the air and lands on your lap, like just out of nowhere. It's like whoop.
Surprise! I'm here.
Total surprise sometimes. Yep.
Teresa says Diana was a virgin goddess, as was Artemis. Well, yeah, they're the same goddess, one Roman, one Greek, mostly. Slight differences between them. Alice says that's so cute. April says, I was in a group like that. They didn't call themselves Dianic witches, but they all didn't like men because they had been abused. Most were into the same gender. Yeah, I was in an all women's group where we had a lot of different women. I was, I'm pansexual if I have to have a label. And we had some women who were with men. We had most of the women were lesbian. One of them was bi or pan because she had children by a man and was currently woman oriented. And then we had some really militant lesbian feminists who were very, very anti-male. And they were of the opinion that I just hadn't made up my mind. At some point I would come to my senses and realize what was the better choice, which I found annoying. I find all that kind of stuff annoying when people are trying to decide for you what your life should be based upon their choices.
Yeah.
And we had some problems in that group from my point of view because they wanted to do some negative, nasty rituals against men, and I refused to participate. I wouldn't let them do it if I was around. I mean, what people do is their own choice as far as it goes, but I'm not going to participate if I think that it's negative and, going too far. So yeah, we didn't last as a group. I didn't last with them. I don't know what happened after I left the group, but they weren't very kind women, and I judge people not by their beliefs but by their actions. And I've never actually been in a situation where I had a man standing next to me and two women standing in front of me pretending that the man didn't exist. He had no reality in the world whatsoever and completely ignored the fact that he was there. It didn't matter if he talked or did anything, he wasn't there as far as they were concerned. And I thought that was just incredibly rude because he's a person too. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff, but anyway, it really depends on the people. Carla says Diana, Artemis, is closely associated with goddess Venus, who is associated with Aphrodite, and who goes all the way back to Inanna. Well, Diana and Artemis are the goddesses of the moon, and they were virgin goddesses, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't have anything to do with men in particular. They were born virgins. So they were born without a man. They come from the head of Zeus or something.
I don't.
Well, anyway, Athena was born from the head of Zeus, and so was Apollo, so maybe something else I'm thinking. But yeah. April says, that was when I was a new witch trying to find my way. I'm so sorry. It's dangerous being a new witch. There's so many things to look at. So I'm glad you made it this far. Carla says, the gods and goddesses move. April says, yes. Teresa says, the women's groups I've been involved with were overwhelmingly positive. I learned to love myself as a woman from women, not from men. Yep, and that can be a very good thing. The women's festivals that I went to were very interesting. April says, yes, same with me. I told the group what they were doing was wrong, and they ended up cursing me. Laugh out loud, but that curse that jacked me up turned me into a powerful witch. All right. Teresa says, parthenogenesis. It's the word for coming out of the head of a god, I'm assuming. But yeah, myths are fun. There's all sorts of things. Aphrodite was one of my early goddesses. And definitely Inanna, Ishtar, and Isis. Shay says Artemis and Apollo were twins. Ah. Zeus and Leto. So Athena wasn't born from the head. She was born some other way. Gabrielle says, yes, it's better for them to heal instead of hating men. I still love men. Not all men are terrible. It's just hard to find a good, healthy boyfriend these days. No kidding. There's a lot of toxic people out there, men and women both. And cruelty seems to be the keynote of the day. Selfishness. Zoe says, do you have any tips on how to stay consistent in your practice? Consistent. If you're always working on yourself and towards your own personal goals, whatever they might be, what you're doing isn't as important as the fact that you're continuing to grow. So, I mean, okay, so I saw a meme once I thought was pretty good. There's a meme that says, the person meets you, finds out that you're a witch for the first time, and the question is, are you a good witch or a bad witch? And the woman says, I'm a bad witch, thinking about all the times I forgot to do a ritual and I left my stuff unlit, or I lit it and left it burning for too long, and I forgot to put my ritual tools away, and whatever. So definition of bad apparently was different in that case. So, you know, it's not, it doesn't have to be, it's not like a ritual path has to follow certain rules and so forth. It's like everyone is going to be on it differently, and there are natural ebbs and you know and flows to your development. So there's going to be some times where you're just really on task and you're getting things done and you're feeling pretty good in it, and other times where the energy is going to fall off and it's time to kind of reassess and be in yourself and so forth. So staying you is the main thing, and learning what you need to learn when you're there. Shay says Artemis and Apollo were twins, Zeus and Leto. Oh, we did that one. And you're right, Athena was born from Zeus's head. Okay, good. I thought so. But hey, I don't know. There's so many myths. And Zoe says, laughing. Teresa says, great definition of bad witch. I love that. Yeah, I thought that was great too, because I could relate. Like, I'm a really bad witch. Oh my goodness, I forgot all about doing that ritual the other day, and I missed the wheel turning, and I got distracted and stayed home and didn't go out and whatever. And Gabrielle says, there's not a lot of conscious people out there. It seems like humanity is devolving and only a few of us are waking up. I know. I see the majority of people, and I think, I'm not sure I believe in evolution anymore, because I see people getting dumber, like less aware of everything and everyone and whatever. So,
Yep, well, there's microplastics or whatever. It's happening, unfortunately. I don't have any explanation for it, really.
Teresa says, I always do spells at the wrong time of day. See, there you go. You're a bad witch too. Yeah. And when I do rituals and stuff like that, I sometimes make mistakes and I just laugh it off and keep on going. At this point, it doesn't matter. It's like at some point when you're in it long enough, it's like it's just a process. It yeah, it doesn't have to be a 24-hour a day commitment. Some people like to do that. I met some people here in town that are fire keepers. They have a sacred fire that they keep burning in their house and they tend it, and they have special rituals that they do with that on a regular basis. At least when I met them they were. I don't know if they're still doing it. And so depending on the path you choose, it can be very strict and narrowing and specific, or it can be more open-ended. And since I'm an eclectic, I kind of have that attitude. It's like whatever works, whatever space I'm in, whatever I need to have done. Like the two things we're making right now are because Ian came up with an idea for one of them and I needed to fix another one. So, it's like I don't plan them out, they just kind of happen. April says, me too, LOL. Teresa says, like the time I did a cord cutting spell and set off the smoke detector. A cord burning spell, not a cord cutting spell. Okay. Shay says, the difference is you can actually see the wrong things on the other planes. Carla says, kids alone. Yep, that's what happens. We're just playing with stuff, right? Having fun. We enjoy our stuff. Gabrielle says, I tried to draw down moon energy and just made myself dizzy. I'm like, I may need some more practice. Well, that means it was probably working. You should be dizzy. I mean, really spaced out. So Carla says, it's almost painful to witness, right? Oh, yes, kids being alone. I'm terrible. I mean, not terrible. It's like if I'm in public, if I go to a park and there's a kid there and there's no parent watching the kid, I can't leave the friggin' park. I'm stuck in the park until someone comes to get the kid because I cannot leave the child unattended because then I'm worried about him. April says, what are your thoughts on ancestor money? I like it, but I don't know how many people who buy ancestor money. I've never heard of ancestor money.
I haven't even.
Does that mean, like, if you know who your ancestors are, you get old money that represents them? Or is it like some kind of monopoly money that's called ancestor money? Or I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've never bought ancestor money, I can tell you that. Hal says, that's why it's funny when people assume you cast a spell on them or will hex them for no reason. It ain't got no time for you. Yeah, and that's true.
It takes too much work. Rather use it for something positive.
Yeah, that's another meme I saw where, like, the beginner witch was like, I don't feel competent to do anything. I guess I'm going to leave that alone. The intermediate witch is like, I'm going to hex them. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to do all these protection spells and everything else. I'm going to, blah, blah, blah. And the experienced witch goes like, why bother? They're going to take care of themselves in the end anyway. And they're their own worst enemies. So you don't really need to do anything. Just sit back and let karma do its thing. I'm with that one. Carla says, the dumbing down of society, painful to watch. Violet says, amen, positive. Gabrielle says, yeah, I heard in hospitals the full moons make people nuts. Agatha says, I guess it's money you leave on the altar or something.
Okay.
I don't know, ancestor money. You don't need special money to leave on an altar, do you? Just give them money? I've never heard of it. So what am I going to say? There's new things on the block all the time. I'm an old witch. My whole comment didn't show. Oh, I'm sorry. Missed it.
Ancestor money is paper that you can burn.
Oh, you can burn it.
Joss paper. Yeah, you burn to send it spirit something, your ancestor, something traditionally done on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month.
So July 7th.
Yeah, it sounds like it's maybe Chinese related. Ancestor money also solves negative karma and helps to pay off your ancestors' debt.
I see. It's symbolic and you burn it. So you don't want to use real money because you wants to burn your money. Carla says, I was quoting Pink Floyd. I'm sorry.
Well, now I want to know what you said. You're quoting Pink Floyd.
Gabrielle says, I heard you're supposed to leave the dead people pennies in graveyards so they don't follow you home. Well, there's very few ghosts in actual graveyards, so I wouldn't worry too much, but hey. April says, yes, it's from the Chinese.
So I don't know. I'd say it sounds fine, ancestor money, the idea, if that's, but
If you're worried about what your ancestors did.
especially if you're in that tradition, then, but a lot of times those things are not so relevant outside the traditions or cultures that they
Right,
come up with, unless you have that particular mindset.
right. Every
know.
culture's got some different kind of traditions.
Of course, lots of traditions do ancestor worship. It's not something I know much about, but it is pretty common with different.
Shay says, yes, Asian tradition to send ancestors. April says, some people burn it to give them more money. Oh, so like a money spell. Burn the money to your ancestors and your ancestors will send you real money back.
Maybe so. I guess.
I don't know. Maybe that's a way of
ask
changing
for
the
whatever you want,
intention or something. You clear up your karma from your dead ancestors, then it clears up your karma, so more can flow to you. That kind of rationalization. So he says, I wish I could do ancestral work. Mine were all Christian. Yeah, I'm not interested in the ancestor work in particular. Aga says, I heard there's a lot of spirits in graveyards and hospitals. Not really in graveyards. Hospitals, yes, but not graveyards. Most people don't stay with their body. Few of them do, but very few. Most of them go back to where they lived, where something was important to them.
Yeah, there is a lot of hoodoo stuff done with graveyard dirt. And
Well,
things
right.
Like that. Yeah.
They do a lot of stuff with graveyards, and there's certainly a lot of stories about graveyards and so forth. But the number of spirits that you're going to find in a graveyard versus a hospital, in my experience, is a huge difference. People die in a hospital, they're more likely to stay where they die, not where they're buried. So I think that the ghost hunters just have fun with trying to make that more spooky than it is. Violet says, it was nice to spend time with you. Thank you as always. 6 minutes left and saying it early. Well, good for you. Thank you, Violet.
I didn't realize we were that close to being done.
Yeah, according to my clock, we've been on for an hour and 27 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Gabrielle says, that's a good point. Why would dead folks hang out in the cemetery? I'd go to the mall or something. Well, I ran into a dead fireman at a hospital when Ian was there getting blood transfusions one time. And I had to tell him to go away because I didn't have time to deal with him. But, we had 3 firemen in our area that were killed in a fire, and he was burnt. Like, his face was all burned up. So I was pretty sure who he was. And he was, not obnoxious or anything. I was kind of half awake, half asleep, and he kind of wandered into the room where we were. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but, I'm here for him to keep him alive, and I can't help you. April says, I do a lot of hoodoo work. Shay says, wow, today flew by. Gaga says, I heard the graveyard dirt has a lot of energy in it. If you in that system and you believe in it, then yes, it would. If not, not necessarily.
Yeah, there used to be a guy doing a lot of public stuff, called himself Dr. DePrince, so you could order like graveyard dirt and stuff from him. And I did a protection spell once where you rubbed yourself with some paper in this graveyard dirt and stuff. But yeah, I don't. I have little experience with hoodoo and stuff. I believe there's some spirits that are actually called to be called up in a cemetery, and like Palo has some aspects of that too, I believe.
Carla says, good luck to anyone Aurora chasing tonight. Magic is in the air. Thank you, Shifranian. Hope you have a fabulous week. Bye, all. Bye, Carla.
Bye, Carla.
Al says, I'm going to Frank's Slide later this month. Supposed to have ghosts around there. Good luck. So he says, have you ever been to New Orleans? No, I haven't. Not yet. Carla says, Gaga, depending on your thought form, is considered sacred ground. April says, I have an interview at a cemetery, and I'm excited. It's where my grandma and grandpa are buried at. Awesome. Shay says, Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Blessed be all. Thank you, Shay. Sheila says, glad to catch some of the live. Love to listen to everyone. Thanks. Love y'all. All right. It's been great. Thank you very much. We had a good time today, as usual. So enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see what we can come up with for you guys to watch. And I'm reorganizing all of my videos to try and get them into better lists, playlists, so people can find what they're looking for. And Violet says bye, and Ian says thank you for being here, and Zoe says bye-bye, April says thank you both, Teresa says bye-bye, and Ian says blessed be everyone. All right. Gabriel says that energy is going to keep a lot of people awake tonight. Oh, the Aurora. Yeah, and the G4 thing. Tina says thanks, guys. Love you all. Ickle says have a good week. Thanks for the live. You are welcome. See you all next week at least. Bye.
Bye.